Hello, it looks like we are live, everyone. How are you on this blessed solstice? Of course, I'm Brigantia Blackbird, the hostess of the Blackbird Grimoire. I'm so happy to have you join me here as we just kind of have a nice, relaxed chat about the solstice, what a lovely day this is for us all, and all that good stuff, as well as some upcoming changes that are going to be taking place on the channel. I want to tell you all about that. But first, how is everyone's solstice going? Were you able to get up this morning and actually view that sunrise? I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. It was absolutely glorious, even here in town. Just beautiful. And there was something about the sun rays that just hit a little bit differently this morning. And, after that, I took a really cleansing bath and I've been kind of building up to the larger ritual I'll be doing tonight. And speaking of tonight, for our feast, we're going to be doing some grilling outside. I'm thinking lemonade or perhaps lemonade with a little something to make it a bit stronger, some kind of fruity, creamy dessert, something cold, because it's supposed to get up to 92 degrees, gang. 92 degrees. And now let me tell you, it is a humid 92 degrees. And hello to Katha. Salutations to you too. Thank you for joining in and listening. Very glad to have you here. Again, this is just a nice chatty thing. I've got stuff on my mind, but I do like to have a lot of back and forth with whoever's listening. And so if you have thoughts, definitely don't hesitate to just pipe right up. Let's see what else has happened today. Ooh, I have some solstice surprise kittens. Our mama cat, we didn't intend for her to have a second litter, but you know how these things can sometimes just happen, and it did. And we were looking at her, and we were like, she seems like she's pretty close. And sure enough, this morning, one of the first things we discovered is that she had actually pushed out the lower drawer of my husband's nightstand, got behind that drawer, and that's where she had her babies. Three little kittens, one bright orange, two are gray. One of the grays seems to have an orange streak on his forehead, for which I am supremely thankful. It'll help us tell them all apart. But the three babies, they seem to be doing extremely well. They seem very strong. They're already fighting. Apparently, they have opinions about what the best nursing position and is with their mom, and so they're all kind of struggling over that. But she's doing really well. She's eaten. She's taken her water. She's just kind of resting with the babies, and yeah, looking forward to that. We're just going to have a whole lion pride out at the farm. There's not going to be a mouse or or a bird that doesn't have enough sense to stay off the ground anywhere near us. Oh, thank you, Ketha. I do love kittens. I love babies. I'm looking forward to when we can have things like chickens and cows and goats and anything else that it'll prove for us to be too practical for us to grow out that farm once we are out there. I'm looking forward to it. I'm just hopeless over babies. I really, really am. Let's see. Since we've kind of gone over the solstice a little bit, and anything else on your mind before I kind of dive right into the changes that are going to be coming to the channel and why all that will be happening? I like to let everyone get settled in for a little bit before I really dive into kind of the bigger stuff, but it looks like I am free to dive right in. So, one of the things about the solstice and the summer season in general, pretty much from now until we get to Mabon, it's just a period of time in the year where I just really find myself rethinking everything, rethinking my life, asking myself if what I'm doing is actually getting me closer to my goals, are the nature of my goals worth pursuing, all of those things. It's a really contemplative time for me. And because it's hot and usually very humid, well, there is such a thing as summer seasonal depression. I do tend to get it, so it's an interesting time for me. I always struggle at this time of year. Now, I've taken steps to mitigate those symptoms and to keep it better, but I still find myself in a very contemplative mood. And one of the things is that over the past couple of months when I've started talking more so about American paganism. And by that, I mean taking a much more homegrown approach to pagan spirituality, to not just thinking about our ancestral gods, as important as they are. And as much as I believe that they are walking this land right along with us, sight unseen, I just feel like in the pagan community more broadly, there's just too much of a push to knack people to look outside of themselves, to look outside of the land they were brought up in, outside of the culture they've been brought up in, just everything that it just feels like people are saying you need to look to time periods that are so far away. You have to skip past the whole conversion era before you can get back there. Look to lands across an ocean and halfway across a continent, and there's where you're going to find anything that's worth knowing. And it's really been rubbing me the wrong way. And so I just find that my thoughts and my heart has been focused on taking a much more homegrown approach, being a little bit more sensible, and also thinking about trying to look at everything from pagan spirituality through much fresher eyes, just in general. We have so much lore accumulated at this stage. People have discovered so much academically, and that's all fantastic. But it seems like we've been looking backwards too much. And I want to is to bring us to the present, and I want to bring us forward. And I also want us to be able to look at things through our own eyes. I mean, that's one of the reasons my most recent live stream on this particular channel, it was all about the frontier spirit and the Old West and looking for, fingerprints of the gods and these Old Western archetypes and, recontextualizing our myths, kind of in that landscape. That's why I had the example of the Hades and Persephone myth retold in that particular live stream. I want us to feel a lot more comfortable in our own skins. I want us to feel more confident in ourselves. And I want to kind of to get us weaned off of this idea that we are totally dependent on everything that happened before. Because paganism isn't a dead religion by any means, and we aren't solely defined by the past, and we aren't just colonial extensions of our cousins overseas. I mean, when you think about it, everyone in the world has come to America, and it's predominantly from Europe for sure. But think about all of the different European peoples who came here and intermarried with each other, and how, we're not exactly, pure blooded extractions from our European ancestors. We are mixed of many different peoples. And because of that, and because we're on a different continent, I'm just thinking, I think it's really past time we started defining things on our own terms. And you should see the reaction I get to some of my suggestions when I offer up ideas in this vein on platforms like X. Ooh, ooh. There are some of our brethren who have deemed me quite heretical, I'm afraid, just for that alone. And what's really kind of been bothering me in the course of those conversations, because one, it's X, and it's very difficult to have any kind of conversation with nuance. It takes 50,000 different posts to build up an actual argument, and by that time the person has already decided what they think, and they're not really reacting to what I say. They're reacting to what they think I say, what they think I mean. And it's very hard to walk people back from that ledge, and it just leads to a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of frustrations, and just a lot of antagonism. And while I'm not going to say that I'm not guilty of adding to that atmosphere myself, I certainly am. But it's just, this isn't serving a purpose. That's clearly isn't the kind of format to start talking about these ideas more widely. And even on my live streams, even though people have been very gracious to show interest, they've interacted, they've talked with me, they've taken ideas away from them, and they said they're really giving this a think about what this means for their own practice. That is hugely great and wonderful. But it's also an issue of how can we how can I best deliver the message? Am I really delivering it in a way that people can digest in a way to where they can really test these ideas and decide for themselves if they have merit? And that's where I'm just kind of squishy. I don't think the conversations on X have done it. I don't think my video content has really done it. And so that has really led me to thinking about other possibilities. And hello to Roxanne. She says, greetings, taking a break from gardening, all in a deep exploring American based paganism. Uh, Thank you for joining me. Much, much love. I hope your garden is doing really well this year. And one thing that is definitely not changing is that we're still going to be doing a lot of deep dives on the concept of American paganism and tying in all of our history and our culture and our heritage as Americans, and plugging that into, because I really do think that the key for us moving forward, it's not us staying in these kind of little isolated things. I think it is about seeing where our common ground exists, and it's about not being so hung up on whether or not our cousins overseas approve of what we're doing, and just asking ourselves, does this work for us? Is this something that makes sense for us in our landscape with the realities of our environment and everything else? Are we good with this? And that's really where I want to shift the conversation to, and paganism just in general. Our cousins overseas, they have a lot of the old megalithic monuments. They have a lot of um, unearthed traditions that essentially are continuations of what their direct ancestors did before, and that's great. I love that for them, and that's probably exactly what they should be doing. They have less of a hill to mount when it comes to reconstructing themselves and deciding how to evolve forward. But for us, it's a little bit more like the Wild West. It really, really is. We're in a different situation, and I just think it's time for us to face that. See, Sita says, I agree with you. A country needs to have an independent idea of paganism or any kind of religion they choose. You have seen the X conversations. Ooh, then you have seen me at my best and at my worst for sure. And you're still willing to speak to me. I appreciate that very, very much. Yeah, and paganism has always been regional. I mean, and we've talked about that on this channel before. And in the olden days, I mean, yes, there was travel, but it took longer. It was way more difficult. It was not as, it wasn't necessarily a foregone conclusion that if you left, you would come back or that you would come back whole. It's just, they were in a different situation. And because of that, people, even though they had a lot of similar premises for a lot of their ideas, and you'll find most people's, they had celebrations for planting, celebrations for harvest, and all these other little things, but they also had a lot of regional peculiarities, and that's a really beautiful thing. And I like to see those traditions revived where they originally came from. But I also want us to decide how we're going to mix up what we've inherited from all of that, because I think we have inherited essentially the entire Western pagan occult tradition onto the American continent, and saying, okay, what works in our transplanted? What are we listening, and what are we getting from the land itself? How are we going to all knit this together? And I think that's an ongoing conversation that we really do need to have. And again, that just brings me back to how is the best way to have that conversation, because like I said, the X conversations have not exactly been the most productive thing in the world. In video content, I'm really hampered by what YouTube's algorithm shows for people to see. So anyone who likes and comments and occasionally shares, you have no idea how much that actually has helped the channel over the years. It goes a really, really long way towards getting this conversation out to a broader audience. So I'm really, really super grateful. But like I said, it's probably not enough. And another factor I have to consider is that the husband and I were making a really strong push on getting our house livable. There's where we've been renting in town for years and years. And we've been working on the farmhouse that's at the family farm. His parents have a more modern build, off to the side. We're fixing up the old farmhouse, pre-Civil War, all that good stuff. And we've been doing the work ourselves. So depending on how time was going, depending on where money needed to go at any one particular time, and the little surprises that the house has had in store for us. It's been really, really slow going. And then on top of that, the man has been switching shifts every few weeks for the past year. So it really, really put a hamper in our progress. But we're making a big push this summer. We're cautiously optimistic that this is going to be the year we actually get in, rough though it may be. But the main thing is to get there. And because of that, once we are there, my time is just going to have to be divided up a lot differently. For one, there's still going to be a lot of house projects that I need to be doing once we're there. Because once we're actually in the house, things will be at a particular stage to where there will be things within my skill level and within my knowledge that I will be able to do while he's off at work. And then, of course, there's other things dealing with tending the farm, beating back the jungle, getting barns and outbuildings into order, helping his parents with their yard work. And of course, as we get things tidied up and get things in better working order, that's when we're going to start bringing in animals and everything else. So I'll be taking on a lot of responsibility. So I've been kind of thinking, okay, how am I going to handle this with the channel and everything else? And what I want to do is I want to give myself a little bit of breathing room after this summer to kind of try and find my feet, because that's when we're cautiously optimistic we'll be in the house. And I also I want to let myself have an opportunity to find a rhythm, to have an idea of what actually is going to be occupying most of my time, and also give us a chance to get past the big major projects that, in order to get done, we'll pretty much need to kind of devote our lives to for a particular period of time. So there's that. And so what I've really come to, and also based on a poll I recently did on the channels, that people really did find the videos having to do with American paganism to be the most helpful thing to them, even though the daily forecast videos are, very much enjoyed and greatly appreciated. And I appreciate people appreciating them. It's more time consuming to make those things than you think. But what I've decided is that after August, after the summer, I need to kind of go on a little mini hiatus from the Blackbird Grimoire and from a lot of my X content posting. Um, it is what it is. And it's not intended to be permanent by any means. What I'm wanting to do is just put the daily forecast on hold for at least for a little while. What I'm hoping is that maybe after a year or so, I would be able to kind of get back to something similar. It might be a very different format, still have lots of goodies, but we might be able to present it differently, or change things, just shake things up a little bit. We'll have to see. One thing I would really like on the return is to make whatever variation of the daily forecast that I do to be a lot more localized, a lot more specific, a lot more looking at it from our perspective. Because in times past, what I've done in order to try to widen appeal is to give a fairly generalized information, and I think that has a place. But I think at this stage of my journey and with the channel and everything else, I need to start getting more specific. And one of the reasons for that is that I think as I better explore my own environment and I talk about it and what I learn and things that I'm looking into, I think that gives people a basis of an idea of, okay, I can look at my environment, even if it's a completely different environment than what I'm in, and just start exploring it in small, manageable chunks and little tiny ways. And then over time, what that amounts to is people not only being more knowledgeable about the landscape upon which they live, but also a lot more connected to it, because I feel like that connection is going to resolve a lot of the controversy surrounding the idea of American paganism. I think there's a lot of things that we might think are problems academically, but then when you get down into the practicalities of practice and interacting with your environment and encountering goodness knows what sort of spirits, and seeing different deities from the European pantheons coming and going in their own different ways, I think that will kind of self-resolve a lot of the issues that academic speculation alone really can't tend to. One major thing is, since we are where we are, the gods are, and as I mentioned before, pretty much everyone in Europe has a population center here. That means that our deities, in a way that's never really existed in history before, are all operating on the same landscape. Now, if for somebody who has a more Romanist point of view, that essentially we're all dealing with one pantheon of gods, it's the same pantheon, they're known by different names to different people, that's not really an issue if you're of that mindset. But if you're of the mindset that, these are very distinct pantheons and these are individual gods and everything else, that leads to a lot of interesting and difficult theological questions of what actually is the hierarchy of our gods here in America. What is their relationship to one another? How does that affect their relationship to each of us? How is it all going to work going forward? Have the gods themselves sorted out a system? Uh, Great big question marks. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I know because I freaking don't. And I don't think anyone does. But I think it's worth us starting to ask the question and doing divinations, going to our gods in prayer and deities, saying, "Could you give me a little clue?" And just any kind of direction for how we kind of all knit this together, because as we grow, we're going to find that if there are other pagans in our local areas, it's not a foregone conclusion that they're working with the same deities that we are. But do we want that to get in the way when it comes time for celebrating the solstice, or next up for celebrating Lunasa in the very beginning of the harvest season, or as I come to think of it, as being the ripening? Do we want to not be welcome at each other's firesides for that? Do we not want to, wouldn't it be nice if we could just get together for those occasions? And so I'm kind of navigating those waters because I think there's a lot we could gain with saying, look, we're gathered together for this occasion. I'm not really, hung up on what gods you're bringing with you. I think the main thing is for us to honor this season, or if there's a local land spirit that the local pagan community has become aware of and is really interacting with, you know, um, do we want to get worried about the differences in our practice, or is it just like, hey, there's this spirit, and this spirit has decided that we're pretty nifty, and we can be friends? Should we be able to gather together to nurture that relationship at periodic times? And that's why I kind of present this whole development and evolution of American paganism as being something that's you know, natural. I think it's natural that this would take place, and there's precedent for it. If you look at some of the archaeological sites along Hadrian's Wall in Britain, you would have had Celts, you would have had uh, people who were connected with the Norse, you would have had outright Romans, and they were all mingled together. Their worship of their gods got mingled together, and somehow or another, people seem to kind of figure it out because we have the fingerprints left over from that period of time, and it's also left over in the people of that area's very DNA. It got mixed, and you can't unbake the cake. And you shouldn't want to. And so for Americans, we are also our own baked cake, and we shouldn't want to try to reduce ourselves back out to the ingredients. We just need to figure out what the flavor of our cake is and to be able to proceed accordingly. And I am trying desperately to find ways to expand upon that conversation. I have a lot of ideas. And and that's one of the reasons for that, while the daily forecast will be going away for a little while, that I do still intend to have our monthly, at least monthly, live streams having to do with American paganism. Another thing I'll still be doing is providing cheat sheets at the beginning of the month. Generally, what I provide is correspondences to deal with that month, plus also the origins of the month's name. Of course, the astrology, what retrogrades are going on, what big events take place, things of that nature. And of course, correspondences for any of our holidays that are coming up. So I'll see what I can do about also providing a little extra information just for people's inspiration, for deciding, what am I going to be focusing on this month? Where can I hone in on? That way, because I know a lot of people kind of enjoy the nice daily rhythm of the daily forecast. I do too. And I don't want to leave them totally high and dry as I'm making time for adjustments at, transitioning to farm life, and also the other really big project, which I'll tell you about now, which is writing a book about American paganism and American witchcraft. It might be one volume, it might get stripped back into two. It's hard to say. These are both really, really big topics, but I feel like we need to have not just me, but many people writing affirmative visions and making the case from their own different perspectives for why American paganism should exist, what it can consist of, how we can embrace the entirety of our heritage, our cultural, genetic, and spiritual heritage. How can we bring all of those things together into some kind of cohesive fashion that allows for the retention of sanity? And that's one of the things that I think really gets in the way of a lot of the conversations about American paganism. It's because it's so much easier if everything's divided up into boxes that are completely separate, that were defined, more than 1,000 years ago, and to have all the conversation just based on what archaeology has found, what linguists have discovered. It's so much safer and less controversial to do those things than it is to say, "Hey guys, I was at the river and I met this spirit and I think I know its name, and yeah, I think I need to build a shrine there." It is so much easier to talk about Professor so and so thought this and such about, the 5th century of BC of Northern Europe of this particular tribe. It's so much simpler to talk about that because even as you're, disputing with someone else who might think that another academic has a better idea or better evidence, essentially you know that dance. You know the rhythm of it, you know the boundaries of it. And so no matter how ferocious the argument is, no one ever has to actually go out on a limb and state a fucking opinion of their own. Or to be able to say, I know I can't prove this. I know that I just had this subjective experience. I know that I have no way to convince you, but something really cool happened and I wanted to share it because I know other people live in this area and maybe they can make that connection as well. It's so much easier to stick to the books and to stick to the past and to look backwards throughout the entirety of your spiritual life because it's safer. You know those waters, you know those controversies, and it's all something that people have a much easier time handling than facing the unknown, looking at that spiritual frontier and taking on the spirit of the early pioneers. And that's why the other week when I talked about, kind of the paganized Old West, it's because I wanted to help people better identify themselves with having that pioneering spirit and to recognize the situation that we're actually in this country. And also to kind of instill a little bit of independence because in those old days of the pioneers, a lot of times you sunk or swim based upon your own skills, your own merit, and a little bit of luck. Maybe if you were able to interact with some good people, you were able to build up a decent community or at least have some helpful working relationships, which is a huge thing. But you really did have to have the courage to face the unknown on your own if needs be. And I think that we would benefit from that. And I think in going through that kind of spiritual process, it will also complete the physical process that our ancestors of that time period went through. I think it's kind of the last chapter of that because we conquered the land. Uh, we did that. We've had possession of it for quite a while, but we haven't necessarily conquered that spiritual frontier, have we? We haven't really looked at what that really means for us. And there's a lot of old ancient energies here. And we're founding new relationships with them. I mean, the tribes have their own established relationships with these beings and entities and energies. But that's not to say that we're going to have the exact same experiences or the exact same relationships as they do. For one, we're forming them in a different time, and we're a very different culture, and that spirit has evolved along its own line, so it could be very different. So we're not going to really know the lay of that land until we actually have the courage to confront it. But there are comments. See, J&B says, I found Silver Ravenwood's reporting on the pagan practices of her Pennsylvania area to be inspiring and informative. American Folk Magic is the title of her book. Excellent. I'm going to be looking for that to add to my library because I'm very keen to get an idea of work that people have already done on this. And of course, I want to encourage people who are also engaging in that work themselves because I mean, we need to have a big conversation. It's bigger than any one person's point of view. See it. And Roxanne says, I haven't been able to pull a card for a few days. Travel hit last week. 3 days in a row, the Fool came out, certainly giving me the message that a new journey is afoot. Yeah, I mean, it really is. And it's not just your tarot reading. I've been getting signs of that in the tarot that I pulled for the month of July. And then I got to looking at the astrological configuration, specifically what kind of retrogrades we'll be going into. And at the very end of July, we'll be going into the Chiron retrograde. And the Chiron retrograde in Aries, from what I was looking and ascertaining, a lot of that has to do with us healing wounds that have to do with identity. And I found that very interesting considering the timing because our country is in an identity crisis. And spiritually, as American pagans, we are in an identity crisis all of our own. So I thought, well, we have quite the opportunity here. Let me grab my retrograde papers real quick, just kind of refresh my recollection because it's not just the Chiron retrograde that's going to be creating an interesting atmosphere for us. Okay. So we've already been in the Pluto retrograde, which is all about transformation, which is specifically of technology, innovation, and power structure. So Pluto is definitely having an impact on, what the territory we're traversing. But then on Independence Day, Neptune is going to go into retrograde, and that's about confronting motivations and desires. So that's going to really rip open our insides. That's going to be asking, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And is it what you ought to be doing? And I think that we're definitely going to be feeling that in our spiritual realms just because of the nature of Neptune. Then on the 12th, Saturn goes into Neptune, goes into retrograde. And the Saturn retrograde will be about balancing passion with discipline. So apparently, it's not just our enthusiasm for the subject that's going to be put to the test. It's about can we actually go through exploring these topics in a more methodical manner. So, yeah, Saturn is going to be big. And then, of course, we have Mercury going into retrograde July 17th. That's about rejuvenating creativity, leadership, and individuality. I think this is very good for us rekindling the frontier spirit within our hearts. I think we can definitely use that to improve our standing for our spiritual explorations. And so, yeah, we're at the by the end of July, we will have Mercury, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron all in retrograde. That's going to be quite the shakeup of the interior closet. But forewarned is forearmed. And if we go into it with the intention of saying, I'm going to figure out what being an American pagan means to me. I'm going to figure out what being an American witch to me. I'm going to seize the unique aspects of my identity and I'm going to start living it. That's going to be a huge thing for us. We'll have the atmosphere for it. So we have an opportunity to really maximize these energies. Let's see, there is conversations. Let's see. See, this says one needs to see the ancient is not only ancient, one needs to apply paganism to today, to this time and place. As you say, folklore is unique to the region. 1000% agree. Absolutely. And also, who's to say that, we're not going to have, divinely inspired stories told in the present day? It's only the Christians who are like, oh no, after this period of time, there'll be no more miracles and no more inspired books and all this and that. For us, the divine and its interactions and its ability to inspire us and reveal through storytelling more of its nature, that's an ongoing process. That can happen in stories even without us realizing it, without the author having any intention of doing so. A couple of years ago, I read two books. One was about Hades and Persephone, and one was about the god Loki. And there were times in those books where I just felt that the author had a little nudge, a little divine nudge that pushed the story in a particular direction because I just felt in my soul, this is the real story. This is the point of it. This is what we were meant to learn. I don't know if you guys ever have those flashes of insight when you're reading some of the books that are retelling of ancient myths, but every so often, it's not every book, and it's not necessarily the entirety of the book, but sometimes there's something that stands out, and I'm like, that's real. And for some reason, the gods really wanted to make that known. So I think that there's every possibility that as time goes on in the American pagan tradition, we're not just going to have the stories we inherited from our European cousins. I think we're actually going to start having stories of our own. Let's see. Hello to Vulture69. Thank you ever so much for popping in and joining the conversation. J&B says, yes, we need many viewpoints and experiences. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, just think about how vast our landscape is. I mean, from the East Coast, to, the Appalachians, and then you get into the Midwest and everything west of the Mississippi, then you bump into the Rockies. Then you have the West Coast, to say nothing about what's going on in Alaska or what's going on in Hawaii. I mean, just holy cow. We have so many different subsections of regions, so many different subcultures, and all of these places have their own unique history, their own unique a mixture of people. And of course, depending upon what time a person's family actually came to this country, they're going to have different motivations for being here. They're going to have a different degree of connection to the land and to one another. There's a lot of different factors to really take into account. And the more people who talk about these things from their own point of view and how they're kind of integrating it all into American society, I think that'll put us on much firmer footing and we'll be able to assert ourselves again with confidence because this is all about feeling comfortable in our own skins. And uh, and I am so beyond done being looked down on anyone. I mean, we expect a little bit of, back chat and looking down upon from Abrahamic religions. That kind of goes with the territory after a while, unless someone is really obnoxious. You don't really feel it. I mean, not really. Some person has to kind of go out of their way. But when we kind of get that attitude from the people who are just strict reconstructionists, and no nothing new, no different opinions, no different interpretations ever, or when we get that from our European cousins saying our opinions are the opinions and you're lucky we let you in the club at all, in fact maybe you don't count, when we get those attitudes from them, it just hits a little different. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't create any firm feeling, and there are times when I have reminded them of I'm an American, kiddo. We fought off and threw off our own crown because we wanted to establish something new here because that's how angry and that's how stubborn we got. So the idea that any American pagan would just kind of automatically kowtow to the opinions of another culture or another variation of pagan spirituality, that isn't really who we are, not in the slightest. So it's like that meme of, for every once in a while, you got to put on the hat and remind people who you're dealing with. Well, it's like that. Every so often, we have to kind of stand up straight and remind people that they're dealing with Americans, and that means something. See, Roxanne Bella says, another book I found that's good for developing your own Year of the Witch, which reflects where you are. Year of the Witch by Temperance Aldrin. Excellent, excellent. I am loving these book recommendations. This is extremely helpful. And yeah, I mean, getting more local. Um, one of the examples I like to use is that a couple of years ago, I ran into a lady who she had her own family practice, and I was kind of asking her questions. What do you guys, what do you get up to, and all that. And she was talking about her family's names for various moons. Well, one of the moons that she referred to was the skunk moon, and she's like, "Well, and then that's the skunk moon in this month for obvious reasons." And I said, "It's not obvious to me." And she's like, "But that's when all the skunks gather for mating, and you just kind of have this faint skunk stench in the air for a period of time." And I'm like, that doesn't happen where I'm at, or at least I haven't experienced that where I live in Missouri. And just she had thought that was actually a universal experience across the country, and it wasn't. It was something very regional and specific to where she was. And as we just kind of look into things, we're going to discover these things more and more. And I'll be laying the groundwork to kind of encourage people to do this in the July daily forecast because I'll be bringing up various animal and plant species, large mineral deposits, our more prominent founding fathers who have kind of a legendary status, and as well as kind of archetypes that kind of scream American from different areas of our history. I'm going to be bringing that into everyone's awareness and in the practices section of the videos, and I'll be saying these are things to get acquainted with. Don't pressure yourself with having to have a whole thesis worth of information about all of these things, but just think about it. Think about these things, especially with the plants and the animals and the different kind of rocks. Are these things in your area? Are these things you are familiar with? Pay a little bit more attention to those energies. And of course, with including the founding fathers in this, the whole point of that is, these are the men who laid the foundation. Not just politically. I mean, when people talk about Americanism, they get way too wrapped up in the politics, past and present. But what they really laid out was a kind of worldview, a mode of being, and understanding them a little bit better who they were and what motivated them, how they came to the conclusions, what they were right about, what they were wrong about. That helps better inform us about ourselves. We need that foundation. And then for our archetypes, that's just another way for us to start looking at things through our own point of view. What do these, you know, um, I don't want to say characters exactly, but what do these ideas really mean to us? How do we interact with them? What has been our experience with them? And exploring that, kind of gentle, kind of low key, but just look a little bit deeper. Allow yourself start articulating things that you understand instinctively, because when you start articulating those details to yourself, I think that really helps people. Connect a lot of their own spiritual dots and they see, oh, these things actually aren't separate after all. My culture, my spirituality, my heritage, these aren't separate things. They're all tying together. They are the pillars and support system for my entire being. And I think that could be quite healthy for us, especially as, next month we'll be coming up on the 249th birthday of this country. So next year is the big 250, which hopefully will be in a good place. Hopefully we'll be able to just kind of celebrate, everything that has happened in the past 250 years, the good things. I know they're talking about doing that big World's Fair for the occasion, where every state is just kind of showcasing the best of what it has to offer. And I hope that really leads to a renewed appreciation for every state, because it's not just the political dynamics of it. It's the people. It's their history with the land. It's what they've done with it. It's what they've created it. These are hugely important things, and I think they do touch us on a deeper level than what we sometimes realize. So I really want to highlight those things during the month of July. And then in August, that's going to be my kind of my volley of I'll be exploring a lot of Missouri related things. And that'll be kind of my challenge of, okay, now what do you have in your own state, in your own background that mirrors this, and go explore that. So it'll be a huge, big interactive challenge thing. C. J&B asks, do you consider the practices, beliefs of the indigenous people to be part of what you're interested in? Yes and no. When it comes to taking into consideration their stories, their histories, what they have to say about their experiences with particular spirits, that is something that I will always 100% take seriously. However, my goal is really not to borrow from them. It's not about mimicking them or just kind of redressing anything that they do or think into kind of an American skin suit. That's not really what I'm after. I want to go into everything with much more fresh eyes because, again, the tone for their relationship with the spirits of this land and any deities or near deities that they consider in their spiritual worldview, their customs, their ideas, their viewpoint of the animal spirits. These are things that were established a very, very long time ago. Different conditions, different civilizations, because I do consider each tribe to essentially be its own civilization. The fact that they're smaller now is neither here nor there. It is a unique civilization for each case. And, and they didn't have universal agreement about all of these things either, because again, they were living on a very large landscape, just as we are now. They weren't having the same experiences. But again, it's something that I will always take seriously. And I certainly have respect for it. And if anyone from the tribes, came up to me on the solstice and say, mind if I join you at your bonfire? Of course, they would absolutely be welcome. There would be absolutely no reason not to exclude them in any way. And if they wanted to make an offering, say a prayer, do what they do, I mean, I think that would be perfectly acceptable, perfectly fine. No issue with that at all. What I want to do for myself and what I want to encourage others to do for themselves is just look at it with fresh eyes. Now, if you are aware of a dangerous entity, treat it with caution if you happen to encounter it. Of course, do not throw that information that we have from people who've lived here longer than we have away. That would be idiotic, in my opinion. But when it comes to other things, that what is our relationship to this river spirit? What is our relationship to this forest dweller? Those are things that we haven't set the tone because we're a different freaking civilization. we don't know. We have different cultural norms. We don't know how our interactions with those spirits are really going to go until we start actually interacting with them. And J&B says, I see it's a contemporary path you're looking for. That's fine. It's not really about being contemporary. It's more so about being honest. The experiences that one people have with their cultural norms and their kind of philosophical worldview, it's not going to be a carbon copy of what a different civilization has. And I want to make sure that we're being authentic. It isn't about contemporary. It's not about new. It's just about what is the honest state of affairs. That's really where I'm at with it. See, and Roxanne says, I live near Cahoeca Mounds. The theoretical history is interesting, of course. However, in the present, the energy presence of spirit is strong there. Yeah, I mean, and that's a huge thing. There are going to be different energy wells, and honestly, we need to start mapping them out, saying, okay, we something is still here. And there may have been spirits that were once very strong in certain areas, but are no longer there. Maybe they were more so attached to a particular tribe and went off with them, or maybe the spirit went off and did its own thing. We don't have hard and fast rules for how things work on their end of things. Or, a lot of them might be quiet and keeping a quiet presence just because they're sizing us up. I mean, like you would with any new acquaintance, there takes a little time before you really form a just impression of them. That might be what some of them are doing, but where the spirit's allowed, yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's something we need to know that it's there. We need to learn, what treatment it expects, and we need to start setting the tone for our interactions. And she goes on to say it's not dependent on any historical story of the dweller centuries ago. Yeah, absolutely. And let's also not forget, we can't be entirely sure what how can I phrase this delicately, what the reproductive process for spiritual energies are. It may be essentially the usual procedure, just taking place in spirit form as opposed to physical form. So we could be encountering also brand new spirits that, let's say a new spirit was born 100 years ago. Its forebears may have had interactions with the tribes who were here before us, but it may not have had necessarily direct contact with them themselves. And so that spirit, what it knows and what it's interacting with, has always been us. And so that it will be a unique relationship to us. And well, okay, hopefully no one pushes us off, but that's a different topic and that's a little bit more gloomy than I want to get into today. But yeah, Roxanne, I think you bring up a very good point. It isn't about copying and pasting historical precedent, because we don't necessarily know if all historical precedent is meant to stay, eternally the same anyway. I mean, just look at the difference in the history of the earth if you look at various astrological ages. We're transitioning from Pisces into Aquarius, and you can see the Aquarian influence everywhere you go. Things are a lot more fragmented. That's why a lot of authority structures are, crumbling about their own ears. They can't assert themselves. They can't just blanket say, "No, this is the opinion," and you're going to go along with it, because that was the mode of being for the age of Pisces, and that's not going to be how things get along during the age of Aquarius. And then if you go, past Pisces, because the astrological age is they're going retrograde in comparison with us. So before Pisces, you would have had the age of Aries, and all of these ages last for about 2,600 years or so, give or take. The age of Aries, you look back at the history, we know of that. War, 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 bloody, bloody, bloody. The strong man or no man, you live, you die, not much in between. You see that. So there was a mode of being that was appropriate for that period of time. And then you go back before Aries, you would have had Taurus, then you would have had Gemini, and then Cancer, and then Leo. Well, Leo goes back to a period of time where they think that monuments like the Sphinx was built, and the reason they think that is because the Sphinx would have been facing where the spring equinox came up during that particular period of history. And so you have a lot more lion types of things. You have more gargantuan. You have a lot more of the absolute monarchies because the Leo is the monarch. And so you compare these different times of history. See, and you're just going to find different modes of being, and that means that spirituality forms change, and it also means that not everything is meant to be completely consistent. This is organic spirituality. It isn't dead. Roxanne says Aquarius is not interested in I just doing as told. Well, I have to disagree with you about that. Uh, because Aquarius is about the innovator. Aquarius is not about It's not about this business of accepting the common ancestors, not the common ancestors, but accepting the common answers. There we go. And Aquarius is about asking, what if, what could be. It's about innovation, and it is also about releasing those floodwaters. Those floodwaters are not going to be able to cover up everything that came before them, and which would have been the age of Pisces. So I I mean, call it not individuality if you want, but it certainly is not looking good for any kind of collectivistic anything. Pisces is the innovator. It's not going to accept the old, and I think we will see the old continuing to crumble. And and while yes, that's very disruptive, it's also not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. Things come into being, they exist for their time, they die, and then goes on the cycle. And with the astrological great year, we just happen to be living at a time when we are transitioning cycles. So it's the exciting stuff. I hope no one wanted a dull life. See, Roxanne says, three Aquarian daughters looking for the new and the what if. Yeah, and honestly, our exploration of American paganism right now, this is the new, this is the what if, this is the, asking what is actually fitting and suitable for this. I also think during the age of Aquarius, we're going to find a little bit better of a balance between a lot of the extremes we get sold all the time. Hold on a second, I need to take a sip of water. Okay, throat was going dry. Better now. Let's see, where were we? Oh yes, oh yes. Well, I had the thought. I think it's coming back. Anyway, engaging rambling mode until it comes back. Um, it seems to me that as we get more so into this mode of I need to find out for myself. I need to know myself. I can't just take someone else's word for it. I can't take tradition's word for it. If a tradition is good, it'll be defensible. It'll be able to stand on its own 2 feet, which is why I think some traditions will come back, and it's why I think we will find a better balance between the individual and the group. But I do think that groups are not necessarily going to be as large as what they once were. I'm not sure that we're really going to see the big empires during the Aquarian age. I mean, maybe it might take a form that I can't really envision right now. That's possible, but I just feel like there's going to be a little bit more fragmentation and people finding where they belong, and actually having a real tolerance for individual differences and differences between groups to just kind of exist and do their thing and to be left in peace to do so. And that's not really what we've experienced up to this point, because it's all been very proselytizing. We will give lip service to cherishing differences, but when it comes right down to it, we're trying to force everyone to conform to this one mold and this one way of being things. And I don't really think I don't think that's the future, certainly not long term. And that's the thing to keep in mind as we're in this in between period of time with the astrological ages, is that we're feeling the effects of both energies. We are feeling all of the earthquakes, and all of the things that come to be innovated during the age of Aquarius, all the new ideas. Remember, what comes after Aquarius is going to be the age of Capricorn, which will be about established traditions. So everything we explore, everything we do, everything that we try, everything that we test, everything that succeeds, we will be literally laying the groundwork for the future traditions of the age of Capricorn to come, 2,600 years down the line. I mean, think about that. We will literally be the ancestors, at least the spiritual ancestors, of what people will be inheriting when that day does finally come. Maybe some of us will be reincarnated on Earth to that fashion. And that's another reason why I think when it comes to thinking about the future, pagans always have a little bit more investment, whether they have children or not, because sooner or later we all cycle back around, we all come back. We're going to have our incarnations in the flesh again. And it's always worthwhile trying to build up a future worth having, because, who knows how much control we have over when we come back, the length of time in between incarnations, what our circumstances are. That's all speculation. We don't really know for sure. People have their opinions, but we don't know for sure. And and so when that day finally comes, after we're in our next incarnation after this one, don't we kind of want to at least have tried to set ourselves up for success, try to leave the world a better place for the descendants who come after us? I mean, that's how I think, and I think it's pretty natural consideration. Now, of course, anyone who has children, this is, I mean, you're the ones who need to be telling me about this mindset, because that's been your daily reality since your children came into the world of, what are you leaving for them? How are you setting themselves up to be successful? But for the other childless people like me, I do think that we get a little unfairly swooped up into some people's positions, that if people don't have children, they're not invested in the future, and therefore they shouldn't have as much of a say in society. Well, in the case of some individuals, I think that is very true. I think some of them are very self-centered and they can't see past the end of their own nose. However, for pagans, I think that's a little bit more rare. I think, and it's because of the life, death, rebirth cycle that we go through. So there's always a future of some sort to be concerned with. And if nothing else, I mean, does any one of us really want to face our own ancestors when we shed the mortal coil and said, well, I could have done stuff. I could have made a meaningful impact. I could have done something, but I didn't feel like it. And so here we are. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to face them and have, nothing to say for myself. I mean, I'd rather try and fail than to have never ventured at all. But that's me. That's me. I think about these things. JB says so interesting. Got to go now. Blessed solstice to all. Blessed solstice to you, and JB. Thank you so much for popping in. Glad to see you. All right, so we've gone over a lot of stuff about the solstice. We've gone over how I'm going to have to be putting the daily forecast on hold after August so I can focus upon the changing circumstances in my life, hopefully being at the farm, as well as putting a lot of the American paganism musings onto book form, as well as continuing hopefully the monthly presentations on the topic here. So is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about? The floor is yours. I know a lot of people are working today, and it kind of sucks. Maybe one day we'll have a society where, these are days where that, we just have off, but we'll mend and make do in the meantime. But I wanted to open things up, see if anyone had anything else they wanted to discuss before I go. Wide open, gang, wide open. It is up to you for sure, because I've kind of covered all the things that I really wanted to talk about. And again, for those of you who might have tuned in later, even though the daily forecast will be put into abeyance for a little while, give me about a year so I can find my footing and figure out where I'm at. But I'm still going to be providing a lot of materials for people to be able to construct kind of their own personal daily practices. And I think that'll be a really good challenge for the people who have enjoyed those videos, of doing something that's entirely their own style, and using it as an opportunity to really tailor and fine tune things for exactly where they live, their exact circumstances, and getting the most out of their practice that way. So I'm not leaving anybody high and dry. And while I won't be as active on X, I'll still I'll still be popping in every now and then, and certainly I'll have my DMs open, so I won't be gone for completely. Just let's see, Roxanne, you mentioned yesterday about alternative names for solstice. Oh yes, we can definitely talk about that. I got ratioed into oblivion. Holy cow! I was expecting a little pushback, but nothing like what I got. Oh my, yeah. So first, let me explain why I thought alternative names might be nice for American pagans. And it's because a lot of the established names, the common names we know for the solstice, it's rooted in very specific pagan cultures, very specific to the particular pantheons. And And that's fine, but again, as American pagans, you might have your pagan friends come over. One might work with the Norse gods, another the Greeks, still the other the Celts. You might have someone who works with the Egyptian gods there. And so calling it the solstice by names that are really specific to just one particular pantheon, it just doesn't really feel it doesn't really feel like it's going to connect with people very well. Plus, saying things like summer solstice and winter solstice, it's just a little clunky for me. I would like something that's a little bit more snappy, a little bit more efficient. And so I suggested for the summer solstice, summer rise, because that comes with the rising of the heat. And even though after the solstice our daylight hours start going down, the sun is still the overwhelmingly strong presence, and it remains so until the autumn equinox. So that's why I thought, summer rise. And then for the winter solstice, I suggested winter set because we are setting into the cold of the year. Certainly where I live in Missouri, November and December are generally kind of chilly, but once you get past the solstice in December and you get into January and February, that's when the real cold of the year that's when the real winter really is. So it made sense in my head, and it just suffice it to say, it was not the majority opinion by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but I've experimented with other ideas of this before. And the other thing with, because some people said, well, what about just midsummer and midwinter? I'm like, yeah, but that also sounds very, very, very Anglo, which, let's be real, we have a lot of Norse and Greek and Roman and another European cultures represented. So it didn't really quite meet the criteria I was looking for. And plus, whenever you say mid, people are always going to think about middle. They're not going to care about the linguistic or the historical arguments about it. That they're not going to care. They're not going to care that in the distant past there was a sharper, winter summer divide. That people aren't going to care. It's not going to be this intuitive thing. And so and I mean, even yes, if you do a strict, summer winter division, okay, fine. But again, it's just one of those things, it just doesn't really feel intuitive, especially when you have environments that you do have a pretty defined spring, you do have a pretty defined fall, and you're just not, you're not feeling like you're in the middle of summer when it's June, and you have a solid 2 months, maybe three, depending on how September treats you, to view that as, being the midpoint. It just, especially this year, we did not turn on our air conditioner until June 14th this year. That is almost without precedent. We had a really cool, very long, prolonged spring. And so now, today on the solstice, I don't feel like I'm in the middle of diddly squat because for in my environment, I'm really not. I'm at the beginning of the summer. And let's be real, the weather patterns, especially if you've looked into some of the people who've done a lot of research into ancient impacts and various climate studies. There's a lot of different variation from period history to period of history between how the environment is treating people locally. So I don't think that is some sort of blasphemous thing for us to allow ourselves to kind of see the to have our perception of the seasons be a little bit different from our ancestors. They had a different situation with their weather than what we do. It's okay to acknowledge it. I don't think we're doing anything wrong by just adapting to the reality of what we actually experience. But suffice it to say, not everybody else saw it that way for sure. But I thought of other names besides, summer rise or winter set. I've thought about, the feast of summer, the feast of winter, things along those lines. I haven't really settled on a term that I'm like, yeah, that's totally what I'm using. And if anyone doesn't like it, they can lump it. They can call it something else if they want to. I haven't really settled into it. But I just feel like I just want something that's a little bit more Pan-American. I feel like I just, and that brings me to the whole language issue. I completely reject the people who say that the key to our spiritual success is going to be reliant upon using ancient forms of our own language or by using foreign languages in our practice. Uh-uh. I've heard the arguments 1,000 times. It does not pass the smell test, because if that was the issue, then the gods wouldn't be communicating with us in our own languages when we see them in visions and dreams and deep into meditation. It just wouldn't work that way. So whatever translation mechanism is required, clearly that's been covered. So for my money, I think we should feel comfortable speaking English in our rituals and in our prayers and everything else, because that is our native tongue, and our native tongue is not an unholy thing. And yeah, but I mean, that's a whole other argument. And yeah, I just want something specific for us. I mean, and that's really is my whole main thing. Also, when it comes to the architecture of our temples, I think I think that we shouldn't be afraid to look at the architectural different designs that we've had in our own American culture and what's going on with it. I think that I think we shouldn't be afraid to look at what we have and apply it into a pagan context. I really don't. Let's see. Roxanne says, in my humble opinion, that's really dumb and elitist. You'll have to be a bit more specific. Are you referring to something that I've said or to something that other people have said to me? Because I can't be entirely sure to what you are referring. So if you could be more specific, that would be quite helpful. But going back to the point, I could see us, possibly looking upon, when in whatever areas we live in, whenever American settlement really became a thing, what was the prevailing architectural style? What did people have available to them? And toying with the idea of maybe using it for building temples and whatnot. And again, it's just about looking at things from our own perspective. And the same thing comes from when we dedicate temples to various deities. If let's say we constructed a temple to hearth deities. Well, wouldn't it be nice if all of our hearth deities were welcomed in that, and not just one from a specific pantheon? It's something to think about. Oh, Roxanne says the other. That's what she was referring to as dumb and elitist. And she says needing the ancient languages. Okay, I'm on your wavelength now. Yeah, I take the same view. I really do. And it goes back to what I was saying before. It is so much easier to have these conversations that are focused upon linguistic issues or ancient history and everything else, and arguing about exactly what was, than it is to address the challenges that are, or what we need to be doing to build a future. It's I really see it as, I don't want to put too much of a blanket statement on it, because I don't think everyone who's past focused necessarily is guilty of this. But I think there are many of them that this is kind of a form of spiritual cowardice. They are using their studies to evade the issue, and that's I think that's an issue. See, Vulture 69, she says, I see May Day as the beginning of summer. A midsummer's day is always sad for me as the day shortens from that point on. If I remember rightly, don't you live in the South, kind of down Louisiana ways? Now, for your particular environment, I could see May Day would absolutely count as your beginning of summer, because the South, the further south one goes, summer begins quite early. So I could definitely see that making total sense for your environment, total sense. And I'm sorry that the days are shorter, and that is bumming you out from this point forward. I'll try to think of ways to cheer you up if I can. Butterfly Love Charles says, I agree, Vulture. I live in the Gulf area. There's summer, love bug season, and hurricane season. Yeah, not to laugh about hurricane season, not at all. I like the way you see it, because you see some of our own homegrown perceptions about our seasons and the progression of time. It's already naturally taken place. You have your summer, you have your love bug season, and then the hurricanes come. You've already kind of fine-tuned things for the environment you live in. Vulture says, I'm an early riser. This time of year, the sun is up before me, but soon I will catch it lower each day. Well, I have kind of the inverse problem with, that you do. I'm kind of your polar opposite there. And I think here's my theory. Here's my theory. I think because I was an August baby, so I was born a week late. My mother was very uncomfortable. She never forgave me. And it was high summer. It was hot. It was, you know, Miserable, absolutely miserable. So I think because that's how I came into the world, I cherish the cool breezes. I cherish the winter. I like the dark a little bit more because it's comfy. I knew another lady once upon a time how she was born in December, and she was a summer girl to end all summer girls. You would love her, Vulture. She loved her sun. She loved the heat. She even tolerated the humidity pretty well, and she loved the light. Everything about it made her feel good and comfy. And the colder months weren't really her thing because again, she came into the world when it was cold, that was shivery, it was uncomfortable, and so I think we're all kind of unconsciously seeking the environment that actually makes us feel comfortable. And I can definitely see Vulture with you being an early riser, how the sun starting to appear later and later would definitely be a problem. I can see how that could be very demoralizing. Again, I can't really fix that problem for you, but I hope I hope I can at least lend you a little bit of moral support. I do understand a bit of what you're feeling, even if it's coming from the opposite end. Let's see. Roxanne Bella says this is part of what Temperance Aldrin addresses in her book. Tell you what, we have had some excellent book recommendations today, gang. We are definitely going to have to be looking into these a lot more deeply. Okay, so anybody else got anything else on their mind? Definitely speak up if you do. I can be here as long as you would like me to be here, but if I'm boring you, we can definitely wrap it up and call it a day. Just let me know what you guys have got on your minds because we've covered a lot of territory today. Oh, but I have to admit, my voice is beginning to go just a little bit. So I think if anyone else has anything else on their mind, that segment will be kind of the last in what we wrap up with. Speaking of solstice, does anyone have any particular kinds of flowers that are very prominent where they live during the solstice time? Lately, I've been seeing this weed around the farm. It's this cute little thing. It's like a miniature daisy or a miniature chamomile, but it's not wild chamomile. I think it's fireweed or something like that. I forget the exact name. Someone told me, but it's been really, really prominent, and that's something that I believe is a native species. It certainly spreads like a native species does. So, is there any kind of equivalent like that? What are you guys noticing in your neck of the woods? What about animals lately? Anytime we've been going out to the farm lately, it has been nothing but those little cottontail bunny rabbits, and they're so cute. They got their little poofy tails. They're hopping away all the time. Let's see. Butterfly Love Child says all of our weeds are at seed at this point. Really? Really? I've just started to get the ragweed and the goldenrod starting to kind of get to their full height, but your weeds are already at seed. Holy cow. Things are different in the South. And then Butterfly Love Child says even the elderberries are ripening. Ooh, what we've got at the moment, this was always the time of year when my grandparents' black raspberry bushes. It's a kind of raspberry that's native to North America. Black raspberries, they are the sweetest, most wonderfulest thing ever. Uh, they were ripening, and then shortly after, I think in a week and two is generally when their blackberries came into fruition. And I have started to see a few ripe mulberries, but you've got elderberries there. That's awesome. See, and vultures got foxes everywhere barking at night. Cool, cool. Well, I mean, okay, it's probably disturbing. And of course, if you have chickens, not good to have the foxes around them. But I admit I am a sucker for their poofy tails. I like a poofy tailed anything. Even I will die trying to pet something I have no business petting. I mean, and that is just a reality of the situation. No getting away from it whatsoever. Let's see. Anything else that people have got going on in their home environments? We've had a lot more rainfall this time of year than what we ordinarily do. Usually by this stage, we're starting to dry out a little bit, and we are now. We are just a hair too dry, and we're a hair too windy for us to do much in the way of bonfires and whatnot. But still, we are above normal for how much rainfall we've had this year, which is very different for us. But of course, we've been in a drought for the past couple of years, so recent memory bias and all that. Vulture says she's got a huge rose of Sharon in her garden. Ooh, a yellow rose of Sharon. That must be pretty. Who else has got their rose of Sharons blooming already? I'm still going to have to wait. Mine don't generally bloom till about July-ish, August-ish. That's when I start seeing my rose of Sharons. But you've got yours already. I tell you what, it's no wonder we've got a lot of good gardeners in the South. I mean, you've got a longer growing season, a lot more options with your plants. Butterfly Love Child says the live oaks seem off kilter with calendar season. They won't drop leaves or acorn until much later than autumn. I've noticed that with our own oak trees later on. They are always lingering. And there's a lot of times we will get our first snow of the year in Missouri, and those dumb oak trees, they still have their shrivelly brown leaves. Now, once they're covered, with frost and with snow and ice and whatnot, they look a little bit better. They look a little bit. But there's been many a time I was, outside decorating my porch for Yule, and then the oak tree across the street was still very autumny. And it was really messing with my vibe. Totally messing with it. Oh, pardon me for the cough. Well, gang, we've been hanging out for about an hour and 15 minutes. I'd probably better go check on the mama cat, see how she's doing, see how the little babies are doing. I don't know if you could hear the door opening and closing, but husband unit is back. He had the day off. He went out to the farm to do a bit of mowing, but it's going to be, 92, 94 degrees. So he suggested I stay home. But apologies if you could hear him going in and out, but I should probably check on him soon. And then finally, Lex comment, Roxanne Balla says, my coneflowers and black-eyed Susans are strong. I love, love, love that. I'm so glad. So, so glad. All right, gang. Well, I'm going to wrap things up now. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for hearing me out. Thank you for no one for giving me hell about saying that I needed to have a little bit of a hiatus from the daily forecast while I do some stuff. I really really appreciate the understanding, and I'm ever so grateful for your support. I promise I will come back much better, much much better. But I better let you guys go and get on with the rest of your afternoon. Happy solstice, everyone. And you know where to reach me if you want to talk a little bit later on today. But bye, guys. Love you.